All right, welcome to today's webinar, Going Virtual, presented by Disability Solutions in partnership with Employment Partners. Today's webinar is coming at the perfect time as much of us are now at home and working virtually, and we can certainly use some tips for success. Before we begin, in order to reduce background noise, all participants will be on mute. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. All you have to do is hover over the menu bar, hit the Q&A button, and type in your question, and we'll be happy to answer it. At the end of the presentation, we will also provide participants with our contact information if you wish to contact us directly. With all that said, let's get started. My name is Kevin McCluskey. I'm on your left, and I'm the Director of Partnership Development with Disability Solutions. I'm responsible for managing and meeting the business and hiring goals of our employer clients by providing proactive outreach to federal, state, and local talent partners. I also work closely with employers to educate them on the benefits of hiring talent with disabilities and provide them with tools to help them best engage and support potential and current employers. I've been working directly with Pepsi and the Pepsi Act initiative for over 7 years now. The Department of Labor recently presented Pepsi with a Gold Award for disability inclusion. On your right is Paula, how do you pronounce your last name?
VAA. Like the three
VAA?
letters. VAA.
Oh, wow. VAA, the CEO and President of Employment Options. Paula, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, hi, thank you, Kevin, for having us. I'm the CEO of Employment Options, which is an employment network through the Social Security Administration. Am I going to go to slides here or just
I was going to go talk about us, and then you're going to talk about you here.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure I didn't. I'm the president of Employment Options, and we have been helping people with disabilities find work through the Social Security Ticket to Work program since 2002.
Excellent. Thank you, Paula. So Disability Solutions, I'm from Disability Solutions at Ability Beyond. That is our parent company. It's a nonprofit based out of Connecticut and New York and has provided services to individuals with disabilities for over 60 years. Disability Solutions is a consulting arm of Ability Beyond, and it was created to help employers implement successful initiatives to attract, hire, and retain talent with all types of disabilities. We're also created to funnel dollars back into Ability Beyond so we could best serve our clients. Our employer clients across the country include Pepsi, Centerpoint Energy, Synchrony, Praxair, Bank of America, and many, many more. Our motto is changing minds and changing lives. We like to change the minds of employers through some education, some success stories, and proven methods, which then results in changing the lives of job seekers with disabilities, turn into successful employees. Paul?
So my Employment Options is an authorized and virtual employment network in the federal Social Security Ticket to Work program, as is Ability Beyond. The interesting part about the Ticket to Work program is that it provides choice of providers to people with disabilities. So whoever is better able to serve this particular person, they have choices within this program. And the qualifications are a person would have to be 18 to age 64, receiving Social Security disability income or SSI disability benefits. And why choose us? We've been over 20 years helping people with disabilities. We've had long-standing employer partnerships, and employers just love to hire our clients because we pre-screen all of our people. We make sure that they have the computer skills, the computer setup, and that their disability will allow them to work in the type of field that they are wanting to work in. So we try to only send pre-screened quality candidates, and because of that, employers have been great about giving us feedback on whether a person can actually get hired, whether they get hired or not. So each one of our ticket holders or people we help are assigned a virtual personal counselor and a benefit specialist to help them navigate this program. I practice what I preach. We kind of grew because of the demand that there were needing to be more employment networks to help people. And so I went to the first logical place to hire, and that was my clients. And about 75% of our staff do have disabilities, but you don't have to qualify for a job. Next page.
All right, thank you, Paul. All right, today we're going to provide some education on the value of talent with disabilities, the value of virtual talent with disabilities, the pros and cons and the benefits of going virtual as an employer, and some important items to think about when going virtual as well. So as we continue to change minds by educating employers, we first look at what defines a disability. The Americans with Disabilities Act, otherwise known as the ADA, defines a disability as a physical or mental impairment that limits one or more major life activities. Could also be a person with a history of such record, a person who is perceived by others of having such an impairment or mental condition that limits a person's movements, senses, and activities. Key takeaways here are both physical and mental, the fact that it limits one or more major life activities, and could even be a history of such record. Many also tend to think of these physical disabilities first or initially, and we immediately think of the symbol of disability, the wheelchair. However, did you know that 70% of disabilities are hidden? Disabilities such as depression, PTSD, anxiety disorders, ADD, ADHD, asthma, cancer survivor, all fall into the category of hidden disabilities. We train employers all across the country, and many people are surprised when they find out that they actually fit the definition of a disability. Half the battle is awareness. A few individuals you may recognize on the screen with disabilities are Tom Cruise, who has dyslexia, Julia Louis-Dreyfus of Seinfeld and Beat fame, who is a cancer survivor, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who openly spoke about his depression as a young adult, and a significantly less famous is my colleague, Keith Meadows. He's not as rich and famous as the other three, but what they all have in common is they have hidden disabilities. Keith, my colleague, has severe asthma, a hidden disability, was hospitalized a lot as a child, and carries an inhaler with him at all times. I want you to keep in mind that, again, 70% of all disabilities are hidden and not readily noticeable. Very important to remember when you're hiring and attracting and hiring talent with disabilities. We usually shock a lot of people when we mention that the condition on your screen are actually classified as disabilities. Most people simply view these as medical conditions and do not know they fit the definition of a person with a disability. It could also be checking that self-ID box for you. So unfortunately, we still hear some of these fears and stigmas when talking to potential employer clients and really outside the workplace as well. Our main job is to really debunk some of these thoughts and concerns. We typically hear people with disabilities can't do our jobs, or we don't hire people with disabilities. So think of that person replace disabilities with a gender or ethnicity. It's not really the disability, it's the person we're looking at. Stephen Hawking on your right would probably not be a great warehouse worker or a CDL truck driver that required heavy lifting and maybe the use of a forklift, but you know what? He was pretty good at a few other things. It's important as an employer to remember you are hiring the best talent for your business, and they may happen to have some type of disability. Hiring people with disabilities isn't charity. It's not just to hire people with disabilities, it's really finding some great talent. So as of 2018, roughly 1 in 4 Americans have some type of disability, making them the largest talent group in the United States. They're also a typically untapped pool of talent. The unemployment rate, it fluctuates from time to time. However, one number is going to stay consistent, and that is the unemployment rate of individuals with disabilities is roughly double the unemployment rate of those without. A few factors include those common fears and stigmas that employers still have around people with disabilities, including false fears of expensive accommodations or higher insurance costs. Job seekers with disabilities are also often pigeonholed into the same entry-level jobs and face other barriers to employment, such as lack of transportation if they need it. Again, we work with employers to squash these fears and stigmas, and we look at the talent over the disability. Our clients have hired warehouse workers, salespeople, managers, and scientists, all talent with disabilities. The talent ranges from transitioning high school students who haven't picked up any of those unhealthy work habits yet, to baby boomers with years of experience and degrees who possibly aged into a disability, and really everyone in between. Paul, I'll throw it over to you.
Sure. Well, is work at home right for your company and staff? So some of the areas to consider or that employers are worried about, that there'll be a loss of connection and teamwork. And for sure, I can't go and have a cup of coffee with my colleague, but we do chat. We chat on the IM and we care about each other. Communication challenges. The internet's amazing. Finding the right platform for your company is important in a virtual world. One of the things we worry about is accountability. You know, when we transferred to totally virtual workplace, well, how do I supervise my staff? How do I see if they're working? How do I know if they're working on the right thing? So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then loss of productivity. Oh, they're just going to be going to the refrigerator all day long, or they're not going to work as hard. So those are some of the fears that most employers have when you talk about expanding to a virtual workplace. The other areas that the pros of going virtual are, one is there's less company overhead. You still have to have a good platform for your company to run on, but we don't have to have a building and many of the other overhead items. It's good for the environment. Don't have to drive to work, save time. Less office politics, that's for sure. I don't have to worry about this one who's humming while she works or anything like that. We try to work together because we're happy to see each other online. Otherwise, many of our staff are fairly isolated at home, and you know, having the team, the work team, is like a second family to most of my employees. Flexible work schedule. Well, working at home does allow for a little bit more flexible of a work schedule because you don't have to have people in the building and keeping the electricity running and all those other areas where you might not want an employee at the workplace. It doesn't have to be flexible work schedule. A lot of the jobs that we refer people to are fixed schedules. So just because it's flexible doesn't mean you have to do that. You get better employee productivity and morale. Nobody has a better team than we do. I have great morale in our company, and we've been virtual since 2006. Saves money. Just look at that. Talk to my accountant. And of course, it saves time. And it really helps you have a little bit better, you have to plan, but you can have a better work and home life by working at home. Some of the cons of working at home would be that you feel isolated, that you don't have anybody, you don't go to work, so everything's the same. You're always working because you're always home. And so many of what we do then is we try to plan our excursions outside to be something fun, something that we do with other people, whether it be a Zumba class or Toastmasters. So that's one of the ways that we help manage the isolation. And so the better home and work life for us, it's great because you have so much more time. So these are some important things to think about. Do your staff have a home office environment, and do they have the equipment that they can set up or use? So that's especially with that many companies now being forced to go virtually. This is something that we need to test, that somebody needs to talk to each one of your staff. And I know when we pre-screen people for our program, that's one of the things we do. We test the upload download speed. We test whether they have two-step authentication, and we give them various tasks to see how they function in a home environment. How are they good at handling sensitive information? you need to kind of think about that. For us, we work with people and social security numbers, so the person can't be working at a Starbucks. That wouldn't be okay. So they would have to work in a home office with a closed door. And if you found an employee that was not being sensitive to protecting personal PPI, then you may have to change them to a different role. So I'm sure some of what you're thinking about is, can employees be trained to work at home if they've never worked remotely? Well, I really am not sure. Again, that's where screening comes in so handily. We find that some people just can't make it in the work at home. Their computer skills are just not good enough. Their learning curve is too high. So it really helps to do some kind of testing specific to the type of job they would be doing at home before you put them in a work from home position. So could possibly temporary workers help in difficult times? And I would say yes. I don't think all of your employees are necessarily going to be able to make the leap to work at home. Perhaps you need to bring in some temporary staff who have been pre-screened, who we know have the skills and abilities and the equipment and the office set up, and to help in those times. So sometimes you may want to bring in a temporary worker and have them help with onboarding your new virtual staff. And then of course there's the handling of virtual meetings. At the first it felt like a little bit of a learning curve. I tended to talk to each employee separately, and then I realized, well, we can have a meeting online just as we did when we all worked in the same office. And as long as you have a certain time for the meetings and follow protocols, they work great. We have no problem with virtual meetings. In fact, we meet with a lot of our employers virtually when we go over the job candidates that we have referred to them in case there are any questions or problems that need to be resolved. So those are some of the areas where work at home can be helpful things to think about. The next thing is, what about for the job seeker, for the employees? Well, consciously or subconsciously, many persons with disabilities are subject to hiring bias. And I usually give this example. Let's say you need to be driven to your doctor's appointment and you've got your leg and it's in a cast and you're really only comfortable in your car. So you have two friends that you could possibly ask to take you to work. And the one person, or to the doctor's appointment, the one person had an automobile accident 6 months ago, but it wasn't his fault. And the other person has never had an automobile accident. So who would you tend to want to ask? And so subconsciously, we're going to go with the person who has never had an accident, even though they may be equal in their ability to drive you. The virtual world levels the playing field by focusing on abilities, not the disability. So in that case, for example, if we were helping you hire a driver, it might be a driving test that a person would need to undergo. One of the major tools that I use, again, for pre-screening, what I would suggest that employers do when they're screening for work at home, is testing. I can't tell if a person can do math. I can't tell if a person knows how to use QuickBooks. I can't tell how fast a person types by talking to them. And so if you're, by first determining what the essential skills are in each job that will help you determine what kind of testing would be the most appropriate for the particular job. And then when you're interviewing, use a functional interviewing for some of the questions, which would be something like, how many people have you supervised? Have you ever used QuickBooks? What exactly did you do with your QuickBooks? So we'd actually be interviewing people about their skills and abilities. And a lot of times the past work behavior predicts future work behavior. I find that people who were happy in a certain job, and when I interview them, I say, well, what was your favorite job? And they say, oh, I really liked working as an admin assistant in this medical office. So I know that maybe that's where they're going to have the best job satisfaction. What about that job did they like? What about that job did they feel that they were effective at? So instead of just going with somebody because you think they'll work out, I'm very careful to really make sure the person has the skills and abilities to do the job. And it's a lot easier to accommodate a disability when they're working from home. Maybe a person is in a wheelchair. Maybe a person needs to have an office that's quiet and free of distractions. A lot of people with different types of ADD work much better when they're in a contained area. Some people may need to take a little bit more frequent breaks, and that might be easier if they do that out of the comfort of their home. So there's a lot of benefits to hiring job seekers and employees with disabilities. Besides meeting all the federal mandates, and the best reason to hire a person with a disability is because they can do the job. And I find that I have a very, very loyal staff. The employers that have hired our people find that they have better retention. People who have a disability and have not been able to find work for years, who now they find a job where they feel a sense of purpose and mission. Well, it's not that hard to motivate somebody to go to work when they've been wanting to work for a really long time and never had the ability to do that. The internet has just leveled the playing field so much, and there's so many people that we're able to get back to work that we would have never been able to before. I had a client that had a GoFundMe page, and he says, I could use some money. I have 2 teenagers at home and my wife, and we're about to get kicked out of our apartment, and I'm sick again. I've got 4-stage bone cancer. So we have a policy where we do help out people, our clients, when they have some problems. But to my surprise, about 2 weeks later, I got a call from, let's call him Billy. And he says, guess what, Paula? I'm going back to work. He got called back from a customer service company that he'd worked at the previous year. He could work from his bed. And he was really proud of being able to go back to work. Now that's dedication. So I guess we're going to open this up to some questions. What type of jobs transition best to work from home? Well, typically what we've been filling most of is the customer service and the tech support jobs, but now we're seeing all sorts of different kinds of jobs. We're seeing sales management positions, we're seeing medical positions, coding positions. There's, if you can imagine it, then probably some technical person out there can design it. Again, you know, questions maybe is about supervising work from home staff. You can use your tools. And also I can actually see people online when they're working. We use IM through our Google Gmail, and that works great. So can employment options help me find pre-screened candidates to fill my remote positions? Well, we would love to, in conjunction with Ability Beyond and Disability Solutions. We want to be helpful and make this process easier for everyone.
Excellent, Paula. One of my questions was going to be, can you share a success story, but you went ahead and did already. So I love that story. I appreciate that.
Any other questions from the audience? Lori!